We are live!
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Vancity Beats, Eats, and more. Hope everyone's doing good today. My name is Jamal, and today is the final episode of Season 2 of the show. It is episode 37, and today we're joined by Milo Johnson. It's going to be a really fun episode. As I said, we're closing out Season 2. This is our 69th episode in total from our first two seasons. I just want to shout out Kazi as well, because this has been a team effort from the beginning. And one thing that Kazi brought to the show this year that has been super fun is this element of cooking with our guests. And we're going to be doing that again today. And I asked Milo what's his go-to or what's something that's like sure shot for him, and he brought this fried tofu veggie bowl recipe that we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be getting to know Milo. Milo's a multi-instrumentalist and composer who has gone from Washington, D.C. to Montreal and now is based in Vancity. We're going to be cooking, getting to know Milo. We've got his first solo record right here with us. You know, we won't be putting it on probably, but you know, we've got the artwork here for it. And then we're going to be cooking and getting to know Milo. And so thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't we start off with the recipe? So what do we have
What are we
today?
working with? Okay.
Yeah. What are we working with?
So this is my. It's really you build around the tofu.
Yeah.
So for me, tofu is just like the easy weeknight, quick dinner, lunch go-to, and this has been like an iterated process. So this is kind of like my tofu recipe that has emerged over several years.
Okay, so this is like the dialed.
Yeah, we hope. Yeah, on camera, who knows what happens.
Yeah.
Just a veggie bowl built around tofu.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So tofu's the star.
Tofu's the star of the show.
And then we're going to add in some shiitake mushrooms. We've got some bell pepper. We've got some avo. We're going to grate up some carrot, ginger up in here. And then you brought some special treats too.
I did, yeah. I've also brought some of my pickles. So I got some pickled fennel that I made.
Ooh.
And then two different types of pickles, spicy pickles, and then ginger pickles that I made this summer.
Nice. So, okay, when you... did it start as a cucumber?
This is a pickling cucumber.
It's a specific
so
type
it's like
of cucumber?
Smaller cucumber that's made specifically to stay whole.
In the brine.
In the brine. And I only see them a couple times a season. So I ended up getting 8 bags at City Avenue.
Yeah.
And then I actually went and got the larger 2-liter pickling jars.
Oh yeah.
And I had 6 of those on top of the fridge for a couple of months. So these are I just brought over some tiny jars of those because
nice.
I wasn't trying to bring the whole thing.
Do you put them on everything?
Yeah, I mean, or have as snacks. It's we're a very pickle forward household. So I got on top of the fridge right now is pickled okra, green beans, fennel, cucumbers, carrots. You can kind of do.
What about
everything.
onions? Do you do pickled onions?
Don't do pickled onions.
No. Why not?
We have some allium allergies in the household.
Allium. Is that the ingredient in onions?
Onions and garlic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we stay away from the pickled onions.
So you have to cook without using onions and garlic at home?
Shallots are replacement for onions. They're workarounds.
Okay,
yeah,
that's interesting. That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah. That's a whole other episode. Yeah.
We are located here in the kitchen, and this kitchen is located in Vancity, and Vancity is colonially known as Vancouver, but it is the traditional, ancestral, unceded, and stolen lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We're very grateful to be here and to have this creative community here that we get to talk with and also get to know a bit better. So I'm really excited for this opportunity to get to know you a bit better, because we just met a few months ago. It was pretty random because there was a protest for Palestine, I met up with you and our friend Vanessa and some other friends that I had just met at the time. Shout out Sally. And we met on the drive, and then we had like some time in between having some food and going to a comedy show to see Sami Obeid, who's a Palestinian American comic, and we came back and kicked it here, and then we went to the comedy show together at the Rio. So that was the first time we met.
Yeah, and I think that was like March, maybe.
Yeah,
February or March.
And then we've hung out a couple times. I've hosted like some record hangs here, have a turntable and some speakers. So inviting Milo and Sally and Vanessa and Kazi to come bring records, and then we just kind of rotate through, which has been such a fun hang.
Yeah. That was definitely a missing part of my Vancouver experience. So
nice.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we start with the food?
Yeah.
So what's the first step with the food?
Just making the tofu.
Okay, so we're gonna start with frying it up.
Frying it up. Yeah. So a lot of people will do. This is kind of like the lazy weeknight efficient tofu recipe.
Okay.
Which is I don't marinate it beforehand.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't agree with that, but I'll show you why I think it's perfectly all right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I've been getting into the tofu recently. I've been learning about the marinating, even learning about the freezing it. If you freeze tofu,
Yeah, freeze,
and then
press.
defrost it, it
Yeah.
has a different texture as well.
Yeah. Yeah, this like you can do, whatever you want to do to get water out of it.
Yeah.
Just makes if you're breading it or like cornstarch however you're doing your fry, this is just slice and then keep it in chunks. A lot of folks will
these are
do,
pretty thick.
Yeah, a lot of recipes will have you cube it, but what I found with that is like flipping and then frying every single side of the cube. This is just easier. You just do like one side, two side.
Yeah.
Get a proper fry.
I mean, if you wanted to, you could even get this vertical
Yeah.
side too. But I know exactly what you mean with the cubes, where
It's a
you're
lot
just
of
so much time flipping.
A lot of flipping. Yeah. So after following a recipe, I think it was at a Bon Appetit, I was like, I'm going to take this and make it slightly simpler.
Yeah.
And I find it's like the same, it's the same overall impact.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Nice.
So that's the move.
Okay, cool. So we got the big chunks.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, yes. Hear that sizzle.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! So, as we do this interview, we're going to kind of flip between getting to know Milo and updating everybody on the food situation. But I wanted to ask you about your upbringing in DC. How was that? How was the environment in DC for growing up? And also, like, your household, too. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, DC is a very, like, historic music city in so many different dynamics. Duke Ellington's from DC, go-go, like, the movement emerged from DC. So for me, like, I grew up playing cello.
Okay.
So that was my first instrument, and then I picked up electric bass when I was 12. And then immediately got into like Earth, Wind and Fire and P-Funk and sort of in the like Motown soul realm, and then started playing upright bass when I was 15, 16, and started taking lessons with my bass teacher Pepe Gonzalez, who is like a very close mentor teacher. He's like a staple legend in the DC jazz community. So he definitely like set me on a path.
Nice.
And I feel like really, really lucky to have grown up there, because I feel like there's a specific sense of history that you get going to shows and like being amongst like elders that have seen the music evolve over that much time. So like being in the same room as a crowd that had like seen Duke Ellington, or like, you know what I mean? Like I think there's a different like timbre to that type of experience. So I feel really grateful that was like the context that I grew up musically in, at least.
What was it that drew you to cello? and bass?
My friend Jacob played cello,
Yeah.
and I thought it was cool. Yeah, and I was like 6 or 7, so I was just like, you know what, that one. Oh,
Okay.
that seems nice. And now, my retrospective answer to that, I think cello is really interesting for people because it hits in a super particular way, and generally what I hear is like because it's in the same range as the human voice. So in terms of the impact, I think people get, it's just like it can hit in a little bit of a deeper way.
Like the feeling of people receiving it.
Yeah. But not that I was up on that.
Yeah.
In second grade.
Yeah.
And then bass, probably because of School of Rock. I don't know.
Oh my
goodness. Switch to electric bass.
Classic.
Yeah.
That was definitely.
I know so many people that like started playing an instrument because of that movie though, so I stand by it.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of those movies I would watch on repeat when I was a teen.
Yeah.
And okay, from your bio, it mentioned that at the age of like 12, 13, you started getting into bass, and that you started sneaking into like jazz institutions in DC and stuff. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, especially in the States where you have these venues, like the places that you want to go see the best music tend to be bars and tend to be 21 plus.
Yeah.
Not necessarily exclusively, but a lot of times. So yeah, like Bohemian Caverns was one
that's a venue.
That was a venue that was like literally basement, and the inside of it was a cave in DC. It shut down a couple years ago, but it was like absolutely legendary venue. So yeah, I was going in there with a few friends like as a teenager and just like sitting in the side corner, and there's like Westminster Presbyterian Church was a really big one for me too, because they would do they had like a big congregation and would do shows like jazz shows on Friday and then service on Sunday. So it was like I was like if I can count the number of white folks on 2 hands, I felt like I was in the right place. Yeah.
Should I be cutting? I feel like I should probably be chopping.
You can be
veggies.
chopping?
Yeah. So
so we're doing a flip. Back to the food. Back to the food. We're doing a first flip.
That's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Solid fry, like golden, but not too dark.
Yeah, we'll do a couple more rounds of this, but initial flip successful.
And then, were there any moments that you recall in DC that really like launched you into wanting to pursue music?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really fortunate to have like great teachers. My high school band director, Joan Racky, was in that high school as the band director for like over 40 years. The elementary school, middle school, high school teachers like all knew each other, so that I had a really, really solid music education upbringing, both like in school and out of school. So yeah, I think just it was the thing that I was the most excited about, and my parents were super supportive in me going to study music in Montreal at McGill. So I didn't have anyways, it was a logical choice at that point.
Nice. It's awesome that you had your parents' support in that as well. Were your parents involved musically, or?
My dad played trumpet when he was younger. And I think it was funny when I was thinking about like the household upbringing question from earlier. We had there weren't like that many CDs in the like 6 CD rotation, but the ones that were there, we had like a Ray Charles box set, which was super influential. We had like a Macy Gray CD, and then a like Duke Ellington and Billie Holiday box set that my dad picked up in Germany when he was working there. So it was like we had a good yeah, we definitely had a really good foundation of what would then become like my biggest musical inspiration.
Nice.
So,
It was all in that CD rotation.
we had the good old days.
Yes.
When you had limited choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what made you choose to come up to Canada and go to school at McGill? Because I feel like there's probably lots of solid choices down near where you grew up.
I was looking for a university that had an actual school in addition to a music school. So I wasn't looking at just conservatories. And yeah, Montreal was like exciting. It felt, like a completely different universe. And I think I was excited to just experience something that was very different.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, I did the business program at McGill as well. So I have.
Oh, in addition to the jazz performance program?
Mm-hmm. So that kind of set the stage for what was to come. I felt like people I knew that were in more of a conservatory environment, like it's easier to lose track of the rest of the world, I think, when you're in that type of an insular like education program, regardless of discipline. Anyways, I was excited to be in a different city, and Montreal was like incredible. Yeah, to move to Montreal as a 17-year-old and then just be, in a place that was speaking French and people were living in, I think it was very different to the American college experience, which was something that I was actively seeking to avoid. So, yeah.
Had you visited Montreal before that?
No, my first time was coming up for my audition.
Oh, wow.
So, drove up with my mom in snowstorm in February and came and auditioned, and it was so cold.
Yeah.
And I loved it. So, yeah.
And what was your experience like at McGill?
So I think the Montreal as a city and Montreal as a context to learn and explore was incredible. So I think I appreciated the resources that I had access to at McGill. I loved my classmates. There were some like really awesome professors, but overall, I feel like I have a lot of honestly, I feel like you talk to any jazz musician who's graduated from a music program and they're gonna be like, oh, institution, jazz isn't meant to be in an institution. So it's like, I don't feel like I'm, refreshingly original with this concept at all. But I do think that I really appreciated, like all of the guys from my band were in the jazz program. 8 of us were in the same year. Like it's you can't really argue with who is being drawn to that environment. I thought, and I think one of my friends put it really well. Is like, Montreal is a really great place to fail, because it's like the risk is just less. Like everything was less expensive. Like there were so many opportunities. There's so many small venues. There's so many organizers. There's just like a lot of opportunity to learn and figure things out and get to a higher level of experience than you would if you were in a bigger city, and then you would necessarily have to like specialize earlier. So I feel like I got experience doing a whole host of things that you wouldn't necessarily have had access to if you were in a different place.
Almost like less pressure?
Yeah, definitely. Or it's just like, you can decide to try and put on a mini festival and have it covered by ticket sales, donations, and some minor grant funding. You know what I mean? Like I think it's just a different, it's just a slightly different landscape.
Is that something you did? This
we
music festival?
Yeah, we did lots of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think it just the landscape was a lot more forgiving. So okay. I had a lot of friends that were branched into like organizing or starting a record label or producing a show series or like kind of getting into a different style of existing in a creative community or in a music community. So yeah, I'm gonna pour some of this oil out into a bowl.
Okay,
if
cool.
You have
Here,
one.
let me grab you a bowl.
Yeah.
Because we're done with the tofu. It's ready.
It's ready to be the sauce. The sauce is next.
It's ready to be.
It's ready to be in the sauce.
What and then what's? Well, I guess we'll talk about the sauce after you pour the oil out. But you have already pre-mixed it.
Yeah.
What are all the elements in there?
So tofu is now done. You got a good angle on that, cousin?
That's looking nice.
Yeah. So we got good fry on both sides. That one's a little crispy, but yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. Good stuff. So, salt it a little bit. I've never been on a cooking show before, so it's,
You're doing great.
yeah. From base to the kitchen. So sauce. Soy sauce, vinegar, sugar, ginger, hot sauce.
Ooh.
Kind of iterate on that. So, and then turn this down
To low?
to low.
Heat. Ooh.
And then,
Okay. Now it's sizzling in the
sizzling.
sauce.
Yeah.
And now it'll absorb it a bit, or?
Yeah, so we'll basically just like slowly cook this down and flip.
Okay.
And it'll like infuse and you get some caramelization happening with the sugar.
Ooh.
So it's a nice, this is lazy tofu recipe.
That's what we're doing today.
This is easy weeknight tofu.
It's Wednesday here.
Yeah,
we're
I'm
doing
not,
the easy Wednesday night.
Yeah.
meal. And
We're
I
not,
mean,
no show stopping.
No.
This is feed yourself after a day.
maybe feed yourself and a couple other people.
There you go. Yeah, 2 others.
Have maybe some leftover.
Yeah.
And keep it really healthy too.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about your band. You've alluded to Busty and the Bass.
Yep.
What's the origin story with Busty?
Yeah, so we were all at McGill in the jazz program, and like the guitar player, my friend Louis, was he hosted parties at his place in Montreal, and it started at a jam of one of those, and then over several years, kind of gradually gained in structure.
Oh, so you kind of were just jamming together at the party?
Yeah, it was initially that, and then that turned into playing. There was lots of different like university opportunity, playing at like this event or this bar or this, like there was a lot of those. So as the years progressed, that sort of took more shape, and then in our third year. I had the brilliant idea of trying to book us a tour over reading week.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have a manager or anything. Like we had just been, playing together in gigs around Montreal. So I booked us like a 11 show gig. 11 shows in 10 days over reading week.
What?
We tried to get it funded by McGill because we were stopping off at a lot of schools as well. So I tried to pitch it as like a recruitment event.
To recruit to your band?
No,
recruit
like,
to McGill?
Recruit to McGill, because we had done that type of thing before, where they would like send a band down to like a high school in Connecticut or something like that, and we would perform and then talk about the school, and so we built that into the tour, but then didn't get the funding. So I made my band the promise, or I was like, guys, we got to do this either way. So I booked us this tour, and then ended up funded the first tour myself, just because I was like, it's all lined up. We just need to go and do it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did.
And then because you didn't get the funding, you had to like.
Yeah, fronted a tour's worth of money.
Yeah.
And then, but I think that experience sort of showed everyone that it was like, oh, this is a step in a direction that could then keep going. So I think it was like that we were going into our last year, and I think there were question marks around like what level of seriousness is this? Like what effort do we put into it? Like how do you think about taking a project from this early stages that's like fun and has some structure to something that 9 people could commit to? And so I think that's a question that a lot of artists and groups go through. Is just like, okay, this is a fun thing, but how do we level it, and what does that mean?
Interesting. Like taking it from what you mentioned earlier, being like jamming together, maybe.
Well, we had recorded material out at that point. Like it did have more structure, but I think it was more like, after folks graduate, there's just like it's like the goalpost of like, okay, what is there to commit to? If we're saying like we want to commit to this project, like what am I committing to
afterwards? Or after school? Or...
Exactly. Yeah. So like graduation is a fixed timeline on the calendar, that it's just like, okay, that's 14 months from now. Yeah. What are we gonna do with that?
Interesting.
Yeah. So that kind of led way to more shows, like a sort of general level of taking it more seriously. And then we did this, it was like a Searchlight equivalent competition in our 4th year that CBC was running.
Oh, yeah.
That was like for university groups, and we won.
Oh,
so
nice.
We were like the best university band in Canada.
Nice.
And won $10,000.
10,000
Canadian dollars. Which goes so far, when you're thinking about
when you're a 9-piece
feeding
group.
9 people, So that was kind of funny, but it did like give us a level of like, putting together a campaign and doing marketing and having shows, and like it kind of propelled us into a level of like, oh, okay, this is what it would be like to produce a show for 700 people, and this is now what it's like to do shows in multiple cities and like develop audiences in different cities, and like the economics of like how much do you need to be able to make a tour worthwhile for people to do this. So that was kind of the trajectory, and then built it up more in our 4th year. So I was part-time in 4th year, and then brought on a manager the beginning of 2015. Okay. So 5 months before graduation or whatever.
Wow.
And then things expanded from there.
That's amazing. I mean, I think those are really important details to consider that, like you mentioned, maybe people don't really think about all the time, but to actually make it not worthwhile, but like so that people can live off touring or doing music and taking that leap.
Yeah, or not even necessarily live off. Like we can talk about this more, but like getting something to a level of professionalism and structure that someone can say, yes, I'm a part of this, and yes, I'm like committing to be a part of this.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And I think that's just such an interesting concept, especially it's like if you're talking about a group of 20-year-olds versus you're talking about like a group of 30-year-olds, like the context completely changes. But at the end of the day, it is like everything that exists is because somebody or a group of somebody's decided to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think that whole process is super fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And so now you mentioned you got a manager like 5 months before graduating. Did you feel like you were at that level of making it happen, or prior to graduation? Yeah, so it was nice because he had worked at a record label. Like we were his first group, but he had been in the industry for long enough to feel, somewhat confident to say this is something that he can do. And it was, I think, I remember the first show that we put on after we started working with him. It was like, we were playing, and then the booker for the Jazz Fest came and left, and then like a Quebec booking agent came and left. I didn't talk to either of them, but like he invited them, they came, they talked, and then we ended up working with them that summer. So I'm just like, oh, okay, that's how it works. Okay. That's like I could invite those people, but I'm on stage. Yes.
I'm not going to be able to talk to anybody. So I think you slowly start to see like, right, like I've heard about a manager, but I don't actually know what they do.
Yeah.
Like I still don't really know what they do, but like that's an example that I can point to of just like, right, that wouldn't have happened if I had done it. And even if I had done it and they had come, I wouldn't have been able to talk to them. And so I think there's an interesting thing to that. So like this is a long rambled way of saying gradually started to understand a bit more about the different pieces in the back end of the music industry. So like working with the label, working with booking agents, working with promoters, working with a manager, like starting to understand the business side of things at age 19, 20, at a time where it's like, all right, we need to start making some more money so that we can keep nine people committed to doing this thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what about your experience doing a business degree at McGill? Did that come in handy at all?
Definitely, yeah. I had some. I actually there was a time where I was really trying to get the music program to have more entrepreneurship components to it, because we learned so much useless stuff. And there were other professors that were advocating for the same thing. But I think what's really funny, especially in like the Canadian music university landscape, is like the professors are competing for the same grants as you. So there's like a dynamic where, you don't necessarily want every single music student to be good at grant writing, because then it's like, well, they're competing with us. So I thought that was kind of a funny thing. But there were a few professors that I think really got it, and were, had their own brands as individuals and like projects. And, it's like, I think there's a certain level of like project development and organization that isn't inherent to jazz musicians.
Yes.
But like a lot of people have that naturally. So yeah, but I do think that like being in some sort of like business education environment, or just like understanding entrepreneurship and like the pieces associated with it, definitely helped, because I was like, right, okay, if we want to do this, we need to like incorporate, and we need to have an accountant, and we need to like have bookkeeping practices, and like all of this back end admin that is excruciating, is just it's just part of doing business. And then now I'm in a position where I'm like, I help other artists and like folks in the community do that in more of like a coaching capacity, just because I've had to do it for so many years that I like know the system, or like I know how to adapt to what a specific person needs. So yeah, the admin sucks, but there's people out there. Yeah. There's people out there fighting the good fight. Yeah,
people who've just been doing it for so long, they have to do it.
Yeah.
And got into it, and now can share that knowledge.
Yeah, like my band's accountant, like used to be a drummer in a metal band.
Yeah. And
he was just good at this, and he probably does taxes for 70% of the musicians in Montreal.
Wow.
Has like a 8-person tax company now, and is a dad, and is still awesome. Like, awesome, wonderful person, but like started as a drummer in a band and then learned this, and then that's now his business.
His main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
You ever have a plate?
Yes. Okay. And so tofu's done?
Tofu's done.
Tofu's done?
Yeah. I don't know if you want to get a close up here, but
that looks like it's soaked up pretty much.
Yeah.
A lot of the sauce.
Yeah. So that's the tofu recipe.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's definitely a simple.
It's simple
one, yeah.
Yeah. So you're basically just making like caramelized ginger tofu.
Nice.
And then now we can toss the mushrooms in and soak up the rest of it.
I feel like maybe I should just quickly chop the rest of these.
Sure.
I didn't do all of them, but...
Are you slacking, Jamal?
I didn't think we would need all of them, but now I think we do.
Yes, chef.
So the group, Busty and the Bass, after you graduated, how did it continue to, what trajectory did you go on after that?
Yeah, so what was nice is by that time, graduation was just like another date on the calendar. So we had a ton of festivals that we were playing that year.
Nice. You had things lined up.
Yeah, we had things lined up through the fall, which was nice, and then just kept going. And had, I don't know how detailed you wanted to go into that timeline, but it was nice and to know that things had been booked afterwards. There was never like a dead period. It was just like touring, playing shows, graduation, playing shows, and then put out album. We did the album cycle for a few years. And then toured pretty consistently for quite a number of years, and then COVID hit.
Yeah. And changed everything.
Yeah, well, not everything, but I think it was like definitely forced a reckoning of just like, wow, okay, this activity that like when I think when live performance is so in question, it's like, yeah, I know so many artists that at that point were just like, ooh,
yeah,
what shall I do?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people in events, any type of like public gathering where people are coming out, to see something or do something in public.
Yeah.
So I did want to touch on like some of the experiences with Busty and the bass, like people you got to work with and stuff.
Yeah, I skipped over a lot of fun things. With that
No, I mean the business side is super important too, because a lot of the people watching this are our community.
Yeah.
And people who've probably been on the show as well. And, the show is all about highlighting the creative community in Vancity. So we've been talking with musicians and artists.
Yeah.
So that info is very relevant for
Totally.
them. But
we can play the name game now, though, if you want.
Yeah. What were some of like the highlights for you?
Yeah. So I think the big one. So our producer is named Neal Pogue.
Yeah.
And we got connected with him back in 2015, I think, like end of 2015.
How did you get connected with him?
Our manager was sent out like a few demos to contacts that he had, and somehow we got connected with his manager, and then. And then he came up to Montreal to work on 2 tracks. at the end of 2015. So Neal is like legend. His big claim to fame is that he worked on Outkast, like Speaker Box Love Below.
Oh.
So he mixed Hey Ya. He was like the creative force behind Hey Ya.
Wow.
And has worked with Earth, Wind and Fire, TLC. He did more recently even like all the Doja Cat records, Tyler the Creator, K-Tronada.
Wow.
Like he's like basically the top mixer in the game right now. I would say. And as
Legend.
a producer, he just brings such a wealth of experience and knowledge that I think he really taught me how it felt to make a record, which was like that's absolutely invaluable. So I think and especially for him, like he came in when we were a ragtag collection of like 19, 20-year-olds that had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
And just helped us find a sound and just like taught us about the studio. Because we were very comfortable in like a live performance context. Like that was definitely our safer zone, whereas the studio was a bit more elusive. And he taught us about that. He connected us, like our second record, Eddie, had George Clinton on it, Verdine White from Earth, Wind and Fire, Macy Gray.
Yes.
And he facilitated all of those connections. So he really like helped us, expand the sound and connect with people who are like my idols. So it was, that was pretty incredible. So Neal was definitely a super, super influential, just a great mentor.
That's epic.
Yeah.
I mean, I listened to Eddie, and I love how versatile it is, and like the variety of different sounds on it too. Like every song feels different. Oh yeah, here. That's actually
this one doesn't work.
a trick.
A trick pepper grinder. You dog. Cheers.
But yeah, I loved the variety of sounds and how every song kind of carried a different feeling and emotion, and it was incredible to listen to.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, and it also caught me a bit off by surprise because I didn't, like, considering that you were in a jazz performance program, and the group had met at McGill, that I didn't really expect the sounds that I was hearing, really.
Yeah.
I was, because it's super, like, funky and groovy and like, up-tempo and slow-tempo, and lots of soulful sounds, too. And the fact that it has so many vocalists, too, was amazing, in terms of adding also those different flavors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of sounds. I think it's like I think the group is really interesting because each person is such an incredibly talented musician and composer and producer and songwriter in their own individual capacity. Mm-hmm. So it's always just been this cacophony of like trying to combine all of those things into a project.
How was that process?
I mean, it's always been messy and super rewarding, and I've grown so much just from being in connection and like creative relationship with these people. Mm-hmm. It's you know, it's a pleasure to be able to like work with folks who you really respect and just are so different from you musically. I think that's always been the most interesting part. Is it's just like every person is on their own planet, and it's always just been like, okay, cool. Like, what happens when everybody brings their starship to this planet?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? All right, I think we're
okay.
I think we're rocking. Yeah.
We got
everything else is just raw. So
okay.
Yeah. Cut
so
up
time to assemble. Okay, we should
assemble.
probably check the rice too.
Yeah.
Let's see how it turned out.
Beautiful.
I think it looks good.
A little wet, but you know. That's right. Sushi
Or
rice.
let me grab a spoon and try it. Oh yeah. Sticky.
We good? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So back to the food.
Yeah.
We need to chop up some of your pickles.
Yeah. Got to chop some pickles. I'll do the spicy ones because I think these ones are good.
Okay, nice.
Okay. Where's your fun knife?
Oh yeah, the fun knife is there. And then I was reading on there's another full-length record that you released with Busty and the Bass called Forever
Never Cares.
Never Cares.
Yeah.
And in the notes for it, it said that because that one of the founding members wasn't involved anymore, that the band was able to like try out a different approach to songwriting.
Yeah, I think the most recent project is definitely the most cohesive. Mm-hmm. 'Cause I think I think when you're forced to like, okay, what does it sound like without this voice in the mix? You kind of reckon with that concept in an interesting way. So mm-hmm. I love the most recent record, and I have one tune that I wrote on that called "Give Me a Smile," which has Sun Little on it, mm-hmm. Which is a songwriter musician from Philadelphia that I've really loved for a number of years. He's actually playing here in August.
Nice.
Yeah, August 9th. So check it out. I think at the Pearl.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about in like the Eddie album and other projects? Were you kind of all taking turns songwriting, or were there primary songwriters?
Yeah, it was different per project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the most recent record was it was we started it probably 2020 and pretty good.
Wow. Bursting with flavor.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot in there. Yeah, Kazi, if you want. Just a little slice. And then we got some pickled fennel.
Mm. You know, I gotta say, fennel.
Yeah. Okay.
The flavor of fennel is one that I have not fully been able to jive with since I was really young.
Do you want to try
one
one slice?
But You know, like it's the black licorice, that family of flavors.
I think pickling it definitely
Maybe
it tempers the licorice.
Subdued a bit.
Yeah. What do we think?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Definitely still has like that flavor still.
That whole like fennel, that whole fennel thing. Yeah. What?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It actually isn't. I think it's just a graphic. But I might be wrong. That's my bad.
Cassie was trying to tell us something and we had no clue.
Yeah.
So we had to ask, but we're good. Okay, so we're doing like a little rough chop.
Rough chop, yeah. And then we can assemble. So
okay, cool.
Get some bowls
Got
together.
the bowls here.
Get a rice bed.
Let me do the rice bed. So after Busty and the bass, that was Montreal chapter.
Yeah.
Now, what has brought you out here to Vancity, the Vancity chapter?
Vancity chapter. So I moved out here in June of 2021, and yeah, I had come out here basically like every longer form vacation that I had. My partner and I were here or on Vancouver Island, like backpacking or kayaking. Like we're both pretty big outdoors folks. So at a certain point, I was like, oh, well, maybe you just move to that place that you always end up going to travel in.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I've loved it here. I think this has been like a really exciting time for me to root in sort of my own musicianship outside of the context of the band, which was like such a gift to be able to give yourself the context shift. And like, you know, I only knew a couple people when I first moved out here. Mm-hmm. So I think that challenge of like who are you in this new place, and how do you build connections and meet people? And we're doing 3. You want one? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can save it for after though, just so it's like fresh.
Sure.
Fresh.
Okay.
And how was that? How was that? Okay, why don't we assemble first?
Yeah, let's assemble, and then we can
keep talking
and talk with our mouths full.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay, we got our bed of rice.
Yeah, we got mushrooms,
tofu,
and then individual elements.
Okay,
here.
so here.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, show us how it's done.
Sure. Okay. I'll assemble.
Okay.
So
start with some shiitake mushrooms.
Some...
And these were cooked in the leftover sauce that the tofu marinated in.
That's
which
correct.
Is fire.
Yeah. You know, never, waste not, want not.
Yeah. Then we got some tofu in there.
Got some foof.
Some foof?
Tofu.
Is that what you call it?
I don't know. Yeah.
You can keep using this if you want.
Oh yeah. I guess the bit isn't done yet. And then just side.
Yeah. Some like fresh items on top there. Get your pickles.
Get the pickles on top.
Get some avo too.
Yep, avo.
Here is
got some
a spoon for the avo.
Fennel.
Oh yeah.
The illicit fennel.
Oof. Okay. I like how colorful it is.
Yeah.
As well.
You know, you want to feel good about what's in your bowl.
Yeah.
And summertime colorful is a good way to do that.
Definitely.
And
it's
then,
getting
this?
hot
Sesame
here
seeds?
in Vancity.
What is this? No?
Those are toasted sesame seeds of some sort. Yeah, you can totally sprinkle them. Actually, Kazi used those to make a delicious sauce for gomae that she made with Momo on our most recent episode last week.
Beautiful.
So they've just been chilling there.
All right. So
okay, so
fully assembled.
That's looking nice.
Wednesday weeknight veggie bowl.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Do we stay here? Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm going to do...
So now we just lean
my bowl.
real coolly.
I'm going to throw... Got to add the color to it.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. Excited for these pickles and how they will fit in with the flavor profile.
Mushrooms are good.
Yep. Yeah, had to chop the rest of them.
Yeah.
That was silly.
Thank you. Yeah, what are you gonna leave 4 mushrooms in the bowl?
Okay, and some green.
How about it?
Woo! All right, you took a bite. Did you?
I had some. Yeah, I had some fennel.
Okay, how's the fennel?
Cheers.
Cheers!
Cool.
Dude, this looks great.
Yeah.
All right. Bon appetit.
Santé.
First bite, people. Okay, I definitely want, in my first bite, I want a piece of mushroom, piece of tofu. I didn't get either.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for me, it's like the ease of not marinating the tofu and doing it like this it's a no-brainer.
It feels like it's soaked up a
It's
lot
just-
of flavor.
It's just caramelized in all the good stuff.
I guess if you did have an extra 30 to 45 minutes, you could marinate, but this is just as flavorful, I think. And I love this whole variety. It's just exciting. You can make so many different combos. You can have like the carrots and the pickle, the tofu and the pepper, avo and mushroom. Ooh, so many options. How are you feeling?
This is great.
Did it turn out good?
Very pleased. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Now I'm just eating. So should we put these away so we can keep talking, or
We can talk and eat.
okay, talk and eat. Just make sure the mic is right. In front of me. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Okay.
The pickles have that really good crunch.
Yeah, that's the thing about using pickling cucumbers rather than regular cucumbers. Is like they retain
The crunch
more. Yeah.
of that texture.
And I find they like soak up the brine and spices a bit better. So yeah,
So-
that one I made spicy.
No, that's so good. I love the spice, and that's just from ginger, or
That,
is there
that
other
one, that
elements?
one's red pepper.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that one's red.
like
red
chili
pepper.
flake or
Yeah, red pepper flakes.
red pepper flakes. Gotcha. Nice. So we're talking about like your Vancouver chapter and moving out here, and how was your experience of like moving to a new city, kind of solo, reestablishing yourself, but also like connecting with musicians here?
Yeah, it's been really incredible. I have developed my meeting people formula, which
Which is, please, will you share?
Which is like just hire people for a gig or like a recording session. So like be working on something. So we work
Okay.
on producing a show or making a recording, and then use that as like a sort of milestone in a new city. So when I first moved out here, I was working on two commissions for this group in Montreal that had like harp and strings in it. So I was like, immediately I was like, okay, I need to like connect with a harpist, a violinist, and a cellist.
Yeah.
And I asked a few people, and I think I asked 3 or 4 people, and every single one of them told me Elisa Thorne, like the same harpist in Vancouver. And yeah, and then kind of from there, like worked with her, my friend Lowen on violin, and from there have just like slowly made more connections. And I think it's been nice to sort of be reminded that like you get out what you put in. So for me, it's just like booking show, like figuring out where I can book shows, and then deciding to put something on, and then organizing people. Like that's how you meet people. It's not the opposite way around. And I think it can sometimes be scary where you're like, I can't book a recording session. I don't have any music written. But it's like, if you book the session, you're going to write the tunes. And it's like, you can't book a show because I don't know any trumpet players. But it's like, if you book a show and you need a trumpet player, you're going to find a trumpet player. And I think that's been a nice reminder for me where like, yeah, booking something, knowing the group that I want to have, and then leaning on the couple of connections that I do have, and then it's just sort of a web from there. So that's been really, I've connected with like such incredible musicians here.
And have they become kind of part of your like community?
Absolutely.
And friends and
yeah. Like, you know, played 2 Jazz Fest gigs this last weekend, like one with Verdine White, just unbelievable trumpet player, band leader, composer. So, you know, it's like I found that that's been a really lovely, authentic way of meeting people and pushing my own projects forward. So I think for me, it's this balance of like, sort of giving yourself deadlines, because I think for me, I just need that for my own project. Just in order to keep things moving. And I feel like, especially now, a big conversation that I've been involved with, and I feel like everyone is having, is like in this new sort of funding landscape where specifically Canada Council and like other arts grants just seem to be like lower acceptance rates, lower overall budgets. There's just less money in the art scene, at least than there used to be. So I think there's this really interesting moment of like, how do I respond to that? Where it's like, I can't wait 5 years to get another grant to push my project forward, right? So it's like trying to navigate how do you work with that, and how do you meet people, and how do you like have the resources to do this, but also not completely drain your entire savings account, like working on a record that you never make money from, right? So it's been this interesting back and forth. So I'm like, that's a very active conversation, but I feel like it's we're all kind of navigating it in community right now, where it's just like, okay, there's way less arts funding across the board. How are we working with that? Like, how are we riding that wave? So,
or finding other sources of income, or even like maybe even like finding your own source of income through like your own work or something like that can help fund your personal projects and stuff.
That's what I'm doing.
What are you up to now? What is that looking like?
So for me, like the part of my transition in COVID was like, where's your income coming from? Like, how are you making your money? And I think for a while, I was very much of the mindset of like, to be a professional artist means that you need to be earning all of your income through artistic activities. And I've definitely done a 180 on that. Because I think even for folks that I know that may fall under that definition, it's still like, you're still teaching, you're still doing admin. Like no one's making all of their living from playing. Unless you're in an orchestra or like in one of the very, very few select like performance capacities. So it's like, I feel like it was a bit of a mindset shift where it's like you're always sort of diversifying where that income is coming from. So for me, I have like a job, and then I'm able to put a budget towards working on my own project, which I think a lot of people are exploring what that blend looks like. Because I think there's this identity reckoning of just like, oh, like now I'm not, like, am I still a professional musician? And I feel like I've had to think about that a lot over the last few years, where it's like, oh, well, I'm no longer earning all of my income from performing music. But I never really was. Like I was, it was always other things.
Supplementing it?
Yeah, which is like, even if you're performing, you're still on tour, you're still like booking shows, you're still like doing all of these other activities that aren't like you performing, because that's not, that's not like the only way that money comes in. So I feel like that's the question. It's just like, what's the balance that gives you the most artistic freedom, but also inspires you to keep creating? Because I don't want to get into a situation where I have no energy at the end of the day to keep working on stuff. But I also want to be able to pay people what they are not even close to what they're worth, but what they'll like feel okay showing up for
Yeah.
And do that consistently and keep meeting people and making things.
And like as fair as possible too. Do you feel like you're in that place?
Yeah. I mean, I've given myself a budget for the year. This is
Yeah.
like what I'm trying out this year. It's like, I was like, okay, I can make this amount work. And so that means I can do X number of like rehearsal or workshop sessions or X number of shows. So I'm like working with that as a mindset now where I'm like, all right, I have this to work with. Like someone else has given this to me. I have given this to me.
Yeah.
And so now I can do that. So I just did a string quintet rehearsal session to just try out some music, which I never would have done before. Because I think I would have had to frame it as like, well, if you're paying people to be here, you need to record it and it needs to go on an album. Whereas what I really wanted to do was test out a bunch of ideas, record all of them, but not necessarily have them end up as some finished product.
Just keep them to play around with. And
just to learn more about writing for strings.
Yeah.
So that's something that I did like 3 weeks ago, and it was awesome. And I'm just
Nice.
like, okay, cool. That didn't require me to get a grant to do. It just required me to save for a couple months. So it's like, all right, if I can pace that out throughout a year, then hopefully I can learn a lot and meet more people and ideally get paid to write something for that. But like this is kind of the in-between bridge, right?
Nice.
So it's like if I don't have a commission or if I don't have like a score that I'm working on, this is just me driving the project forward myself.
Yeah, and even like taking that into your own hands, like where you're not relying on the funding necessarily, and you can still support yourself and your projects and your ideas through your own work and efforts. Before we go, I do want to talk about just your first solo record. Mm-hmm. How did it feel putting this out?
Pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I think the back is also fun. So I designed it to look like a Blue Note record. And yeah, I mean, the first song on here I wrote when I was 17.
Yeah.
So this was a very long time in the making. And yeah, it was very cathartic. Like my only goal was to make a vinyl record and send it to my bass teacher Pepe. That was like my album concept.
Yeah.
It was just like exist in vinyl.
Yes.
So yeah, I think I learned a ton and it felt like the record I wanted to make. I've always been really moved by ballads records. So like John Coltrane ballads or like Johnny Hodges or sort of those types of records that I have that I'll just put on all the time and flip back and forth for an entire evening. Those have always had a really special place for me. So yeah, so this was like my expression of that.
Nice. And I mean, you said you'd been working on it for a while. You have songs that you wrote when you were 17. Like, I know there's some people who kind of like for their first record, they have so much behind it. Now that you have released it, like what are you looking forward to and like what's that feeling now for your future projects?
Yeah, I mean I have a second record that I'm finishing this summer.
Right.
Just did the last recordings for it about a month ago.
Nice, congrats.
And the first project is always so funny because it's like you spend all of your learnings, like all of your development as an individual musician and your personal voice is in that, and then it's like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So for me, it's been nice because even before I finished that one, I had started working on material for the second record. So I feel like I've had a big overlap between the time that I've written something, the time I've recorded it, when it actually got released, and then the overlap now. And I've even started working on material for a third record before I've finished the second one.
Yeah.
So it's been a funny kind of cascade workflow. But yeah, I think as a composer right now, I'm just interested in finding new sounds and combining like jazz and classical chamber music. Because I obviously have a primarily jazz background, but I'm really inspired by like strings, harp, textures that you don't get with explicitly jazz instrumentation, but approaching that from less of a classical lens. Like I don't have a classical composition background. So yeah, that's been like my question to explore in all of these various concepts. So yeah, I think for me the next big project that I'm working on is like obviously putting out that second record, and then on the live side I have a sound of like a 9 or a 10 piece, so like jazz quintet with strings, that I really am excited to hear how that feels. Nice. So that's like the next thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what it is. I haven't heard it yet. So
well, I do want to say thank you because you did gift me this. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And also want to thank you so much for your time today, taking the time to be here, sharing your story for everyone, you know, for us to get to know you a bit better, and take us through like your journey that you've been on. So, and I'm stoked that you landed here in Vancity.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to keep eating. We're going to make a bowl for Kazi, and we're going to sign off. My name is Jamal. We've been joined by Milo Johnson today. Check him out online. He has a sweet website. Is that where you want people to check it out?
Yeah, or just search Milo Walker Johnson on any streaming platform.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And this has been episode 37 of season 2, the last episode of season 2. Thanks so much for tuning in. Shout outs to Kazi. Shout outs to all of you watching on the replay. This has been a jazzy production, and this has been Vancity Beats, Eats, and